Are you ready?
Hello and welcome to Canon Question Time with the guest today, Scotty G, Scooby G, BJ, and
Matthew, it's not Saturday night. You can put the wine down, son.
Get the wine down, mate. Is everyone got a drink?
Yeah, I do.
Decent. Right. That's a good intro, Matthew. Since I've started recording, that'll be decent to start off with. Put your phone down, mate.
FTP.
Right. So first of all, cheers for doing this to me, lads. I appreciate it. Obviously, been talking about it for a while and trying to get things together. So we'll have a wee chat about it. I've been thinking for a while about doing this and how I could do it, or sorry, should I say we could do it to make it a little bit different to other things that are out there already. But my first thought was we could just have a chat on kind of how we do when we're all together doing a wee walk around the beautiful village of Gullin, is just chat about how the game has differed. Love that, Scotty, with the raise. How the game's different from when we kind of grew up as kids enjoying it, compared to now, because obviously it's changed drastically. And we'll go through a few different things to chat about. One of them we'll talk about VAR. The other we'll talk about tackling and challenges and stuff. Then we'll chat about how defending's changed as well. And then we'll finish off a little bit on what we think, what impact social media has had on it. All the things we kind of talk about anyway. So, Matthew, I'll start with you on VAR. What's your general opinion, based off since VAR's come in? How do you think it's done for you, good or bad, or both?
Get it out.
Get it out.
No, I'm being serious. I'm not a fan, and this is why. I feel like there's such a natural element to the game, right? And it's completely ruining that. I'm trying to think about comparing it to when I used to play, or even comparing it to to back that up, like a striker, right? So if a striker likes to play in the shoulders and likes to get in behind, you used to be able to cheat a little bit, and that's a natural skill that you can have and a natural element of the game to try and cheat, playing between the centre half, try getting behind, and VR's completely ruined and taken out that kind of streetwise side of it. And I just think the natural element of the game, which is so beautiful and comes so naturally, it's just been destroyed by VR because everything is to the it's all kind of human
They're trying to get
judged,
they're trying to get it too perfect.
Far too perfect. And what I'm trying to say is that natural element, I think, is just gone from the game. Even trying to foul someone or put in a little something there or a little nudge of that, you can't get away with it now because the spotlight's on you 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't agree with it. And I know the argument for it is, well, it's a decider if it could be the decider if your team goes down or you don't get the 3 points or you don't get the goal or whatever it is. But that's football to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'd much rather have it personally. I'd much rather have it how it used to be with the ref, and if it was just a game and that's what happened. If it was wrong, it was wrong. If it was right, it was right. Whatever.
Has it solved anything though? Because it feels like we're now talking more about decisions now than what we were even back then. Like offside rules, penalties. You're still having that debate on what's good and what's not.
I agree. I agree with that. I think if anything, it's made the debate more. I'd agree with that, 100%. What do you think, Scotty?
But VAR's been brought in for a reason, right? If the game was perfect before, nobody would have thought of VAR, right? So they need VAR for some things, but it's the people doing it and the way they're doing it is ruining football, 100%. Some of the calls you've seen recently, that's all human error, and they've got the VAR in front of them. They've got 6 lines, they've got dots, they've gone too deep into it.
I think what Matthew was getting at as well, they're taking the letter of the law too literally. I know Neville and that always make the debate for getting an ex-player in the VAR at Stockley Park, whatever it's called. Because look at the decision that Mike Dean's made at the weekend for Patrick Bamford's goal. No ex-player in in there makes that decision. No one rules that offside. That's the worst. To me, that's the worst one that we've seen.
And I think one thing that's bad about VAR now is it's so heavily in favour of defender.
Yeah.
Like, no striker that I've seen recently has gained from VAR.
And it used to be the other way around. It used to be that when before there wasn't VAR, that if a striker was able to slightly cheat and like play in between the centre halves or try and make the running behind, it always went to the favour of the striker. And like, I think that's how it should be.
Even, I mean, I agree with that. It's definitely gone in favour of the defender. But even for the defenders, like obviously what we've just seen a few times at the weekend with Gomez and Kilman at Wolves, like even for them, like handballs is just like ridiculous. I mean, the Gomez one maybe a little bit more than the Wolves one, but both of them, like Carragher and all that we're saying as ex-players, is they're running to try and defend the ball. Like how can you expect defenders to put their hands behind their back and try and defend a modern day attacker who is literally the skill set is to be rapid and be good at 1v1s? Like how you expect to defend against that with your hands behind your back? You're gonna fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
Football's so complex, but it's so simple at the same time. But even like, off the top of my head now, I was even to try and explain the handball rule, it's so difficult because there's so many different contexts that it can be in, because there's a million scenarios that could happen. So that's where I think the confusion comes in. There's like if you look at Gomez's handball at the weekend, right, for Liverpool, what did you think was a handball or no?
I think the Gomez one, I don't think it is, in my opinion, but I think to the letter of the law right now, it is. I think the ball's travelled far enough compared to the Wolves. I think the Kilman at Wolves has been so hard done by, because the balls came from like 3 or 4 yards, and his hand is in a natural running position, where I think the Gomez one, I still don't think it's a handball, but to the letter of the law, as VAR does, that's always going to get given.
If you're a striker right now, you might as well blast it. Get the ball and blast it into the box. If it goes in, it goes in. If it hits a hand, you're getting a penalty.
Well, have they changed the handball rule recently?
They did, yeah. They did change it a little bit because they were given, like, literally it was, if it hit your hand, it was a pen. And now they've tried to say, like, where your arms are and, like, if it hits a certain part of your arm.
That's where I think is the issue is like, they've changed the handball rule, it seems like. Like, if they kept the handball rule before and just used VAR to look at that handball rule, then maybe things would be different. But I feel like they've way overcomplicated it.
They asked Conor Cody on the weekend, they asked, can you explain what handball is and what a handball isn't? And he's a Premier League defender and he had no idea.
Yeah.
He like, well, I don't actually know. He's like, I don't actually know if it's to do with hands by your side or whatever. He's like, it's just so confusing. And he's a Premier League player.
I think a big thing, which I don't know how you would do, but I think it should almost be taken in, like, when the ref goes to the screen, like, for example, certainly on the Gomez one, it should be taken into, like, the context of the moment and not played down at slow-mo. Because I watched the Inside Anfield thing today, and it showed you, like, it obviously is like it's filming the game, and for the Gomez goal, like De Bruyne in, like, real time at the camera angle that's, like, quite close to it, De Bruyne smashed it, like, it's at some pace. Like, Gomez's ran like this, and as De Bruyne's hit it, I don't know how he's meant to turn his hand out of the way. So I just think that if you're a pro ref, you should take it in the context of the situation. That like it's just not a pen. I don't think.
I don't think it's a pen either. I don't think it's a pen at all. I don't know what Gomez is meant to do there. Like, if someone tries to deliberately handball the ball like that, it's quite obvious. You can't really hide it. So I think that's where they need to try and fix it.
There's no intent for him to actually handball it.
I
agree. At all.
Yeah, I think he's not gone like that. He's not tried to stop that. That's just hit his hand. That's a natural hitting of the.
I think to flip it. One thing that I thought of when I was thinking about this was, because at the time my mate was a Spurs fan, was the goal that you remember when Sterling scored in the Champions League Champions League quarters against Spurs, and they were going mental, and then obviously he was clearly offside by VAR, like it wasn't even a debate. So Spurs got to go through. So like in that instance, like it's probably quite good because the ref is given it. but VAR is clearly showing he's offside. But I think the big thing there is that it was obvious that Sterling was offside, so there's no issue. But when they start doing the armpit thing and Bamford pointing and that, it's like, I just don't think it needs to be that. Like, they're almost trying to prove that it should work.
I like the idea of football being controversial and it actually being right and wrong, and actually having excitement to it, and not it being super precise. Like, and I like the reason I don't like VAR is I like the fact of like one human being or maybe two others, the linesman as well, obviously trained and stuff, and like, you know, trained to deal with stuff like that, but there's decisions being made on that, and there should be controversy and there should be right and wrong, and because that's part of football to me.
And how much better is that with a stadium full of fans when the referee's got a decision to make and he's like, it could make or change the whole game?
It's what I mean, yeah, exactly. But
that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, and let's not. I mean, we could talk for ages on VAR and talk about how it's. Let's say if there was fans and like now people score and they don't celebrate because like let's wait for them. Like it's a shambles, and I just think the football should be controversy. It should be right and wrong. It should be heartache. It should be glory. Like it's all of that. It's just all this massive mix of emotions that is the natural game of football.
City would have given us a tougher game in the final as well, to be fair.
Yeah, I think what you just said there, Matthew, is hits the nail on the head, because the biggest thing about football is when your team scores a goal. Like that moment of your team scoring a goal, and it's not that like in the past before VAR, like your team scored, you've celebrated, then the ref's given it as offside. It's the fact that like there's like it takes away that moment, that sheer moment of like joy and excitement, and then it takes like fucking 2 minutes for them to make a decision. I think that's what the issue is. I'd rather the refs just blow the whistle, said it's offside, and that's it.
Aston Villa scored in the 46th second on Sunday. It took 6 minutes before they played again.
Really?
Yeah.
There was something like 6 minutes, and they'd only played 46 seconds of football. And John McGinn scored a screamer, and he's sitting there thinking, he's waiting minutes.
Yeah.
And why was that goal offside as well, by the way?
I know.
Yeah, rock bottom.
Do you think that's a joke as well?
If you're taking that long, you can't get it. Like you can't get it wrong when you're taking that long. Surely.
Yeah. No, I just think that it takes too long. I think football is all about flow, and it's all about emotion. And the biggest joy of football is when your team scores a goal. And I think there's like, just to maybe play devil's advocate, because obviously I don't think anyone's really got any good thing to say about it, but using that Spurs and City game as an example, I mean, at the end of the day, that was a clearly right decision, and I think everyone could agree with that. So I think in that instance, I don't necessarily mind it, because it was clearly correct. It was fine. But it's when it takes so long, and they're putting it as Bamford's pointing to go through on goal.
Would the ref, let's say VAR wasn't a thing, do you reckon, I mean, we'll never know the answer, but would a referee do you think he would have been able to make that decision without, let's say VAR wasn't a thing, by himself?
No, he gave the goal.
No, because he gave the goal. City had scored, he gave the goal. The linesman in that didn't put the flag up, he gave the goal.
Wait, sorry, you're talking about, was there VAR in this game?
Yeah.
In the City Spurs game, mine in the Champions League, where Sterling scored in the last minute, and City were going through and Spurs were out.
I think it was to make it 4-3.
Yeah, and VAR checked it, and it was obvious he was off at some point in the play, so it didn't get given. So I was like, that's fine, because like it's made a correct decision, and it's quite clearly obvious. It's when they try and do this whole armpit thing and toe, where I just think they're just trying to aim too much for perfection. Like you said at the start.
The offside rule is so awkward though, because it's like it is fine margins. So then, if they were to keep VAR but improve that rule, it's such a difficult thing to do. I don't even know how they would do it. It's probably a case of technology improving.
It is simple to fix. Just don't have an idiot on the VAR machine. Like have somebody that knows football and it's obvious. Like Patrick Bamford getting put offside is mental.
Yeah, that is mental.
Surely somebody that watches football all the time can see that and go, that's not offside.
Cost my fantasy team as well.
Yeah,
Leeds have kicked off about that.
If you want to wait ages to see a decision made, away and watch rugby.
Well, look at that game, for example, though. So that goal, that goal counts, which it obviously should. Leeds make it 1-1, and it's like, what, 15 minutes into the game?
Yeah.
Instead, Crystal Palace are 2-0 up 20 minutes in. Leeds are fucked.
Yeah, and now Leeds are struggling.
Big difference.
It totally changes the game.
I also had a Patrick Bamford double for 80 quid.
Aye, so you know when you're bet either, mate.
Get
I
it.
mean,
Gamble
I think
responsibly.
like Matthew said, we could we could
Please
chat
gamble responsibly.
we could chat about it we could literally spend the whole time chatting about it, but I just think it's changed the game. I think I actually put down today, we are too young to like have realized the change, but I think it's the biggest change in football since the Premier League got started and like Sky came about and then the money came in and that changed football in a way. I think now, because if you think about kids that are growing up, you know, kids that we coach, Matthew, in America, and just young kids, like, they're going to grow up with VAR, so they're not going to know any different. So it's going to be, when they're our age, it's going to be okay for them, if that makes sense.
Do you think what I think is ruining football is there's so many penalties as well?
Yeah.
It's an exciting part of the game. If your team got a penalty, you're like, oh, you're buzzing with it. But
You
now
used to never get penalty.
you watch Man United, you're expecting a penalty every single game, at least one.
Yeah.
Every time it goes into the box, you're going, that could be a penalty.
Yeah.
That ruins the excitement of.
It's changed the game, it's changed the game for the players, which I think that kind of gets me on to the next thing that we should chat about. Would be the first thing would be, I think the big thing it's done is it's changed like tackling massively and defending, because like you said at the start, Matthew, players are on the spotlight. Like every foul, every little thing, every little shirt pull is getting looked at, and for everyone that's played the game or even just knows the game and watch it a lot, like that's part of the game. Like you do a wee shirt pull, you do a wee trip, you can get away with
Vinny
things.
Jones would have been sent off for fucking grabbing Gazza's balls, man.
Vinny Jones would have never played a game.
That's
He
what I
would have just been
mean.
suspended all the time.
But
Every 5 games.
So I think but on the tackling point, I think it's making your players need to be different, which is again, like, it's changing the game, because I think the players now that like suit it are your Fabinhos or your Kantes. Like if you compare that to like a Keenan Vieira, who part of their game was to be able to put in big tackles, right? That would now be definitely deemed as fouls or penalties or whatever. Like, you know, Fabinhos and Kantes and that skill set is a lot harder to do, because now you've almost got to be dead perfect, or be a defender, a centre-back, be whoever it is, a Kurt Zuma or a Harry Maguire. You've got to be like near on perfect with defending, and almost like literally never go to ground, especially the centre-back, because you're going to get a foul given against you for a little touch.
That's also another one of these things that, like, as Matthew said earlier, you said, if you look at things in slow motion, it always looks 10 times worse. So when you're like some of the tackles now, it's pretty, like, I know obviously the Pickford one on Van Dijk and blah blah blah, and then a lot of people were sharing like the Van Dijk one against Napoli, and it's like, yeah, in a snippet, a little screenshot, obviously the Van Dijk one doesn't look good against Napoli, but you got to remember that, like, he slid in, got the ball, and yeah, maybe contacted the guy afterwards, but like at the end of the day, you're playing a game of, like, a sport where you're trying to kick a thing with your foot. Like there's gonna be instances of that.
Yep. I agree with that.
To link that in with VAR, like, they need to take that into account when they're making these decisions, because you can't send folk off for stuff like that. Even the Pickford one, obviously it's like, it's late and it's a bad one, but like at the end of the day, he's trying to go for the ball or block the ball. He's not. I mean, it's probably a sending off, so it's probably not the best example. But
that's changing a lot more without fans as well. Like, gone's the need of the first 5 minutes. Make a challenge, make yourself known, physical presence. That's gone as well.
Yeah.
Everyone's just playing football from the very start. But if you watch a derby, any derby from the last 10 years, a tackle's flying in, or there's a shoulder barge, there's a nudge or something early doors, but you just can't get away with it anymore.
No, you can't get away with anything, and I just think that, like, it's changing the game of football is what I'm trying to get to, because you're having to deal with those moments of not doing the things that we're talking about that makes football, and I think, unfortunately, like everything, it'll evolve and it's going to change. But
here's a question: what if, like, obviously it's made changes now, but it's only been, how long has it been around for?
It was only this season and last season.
Yeah, and it was in the Champions League the year before.
Yeah.
Right, so we're talking like we've probably not seen. We've probably seen one or two changes, how it's changed the game. There'll be bigger changes to come, but even like I was saying, if you think of like a striker likes to play in the shoulders, right, and you're coming up to the youth teams, there's no VAR for you, right, because they're not going to do like VAR in like a U16 game or whatever. Do you then need to adapt your game when if let's say you get into the first team in that, and do you now have to adapt your game because you can't quite cheat as much or play in the shoulders as much because there's literally this technology that if you're a centimeter offside, it's going to call it, and then. Or what if you do get into the first team and you get called off side all the time because you're used to playing on the shoulder, but VAR keeps messing up for you, and then you're out the first team and it's hard to get back in.
Yeah, it's a
Probably
fair
point.
100%.
yes, it's a fair point.
Different rules changes the game, isn't it? It's a different rules. You're playing a different sport almost.
It's like a different, yeah. I mean, there's completely different rules to it. Surely it's rules. Surely it's rules. It's rules that define a sport, and
yeah,
it's a big That's a big change for a rule.
it's a different mode. Yeah, it's just a totally different sport.
Yeah, no, it makes it massive, and then also Matthew, obviously in a situation we've been in, like it'll change the way a coach approaches the game, right? It'll change the way a coach approaches the game and coaches his teams and does this and that. So it's going to have a big
playing a
impact.
high line. Teams are playing higher lines because of it. When VR came in, Liverpool started doing it. They also teams defend higher from set pieces because as a defender, you know, like you can cheat a little bit and VR is going to be on your side, so you can play higher. Things like that affect massively.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that's a good thing in some ways, though. It's making it way more attacking. Teams want to play forward and try and score more goals.
Yeah, I'd probably say so, actually.
It makes it way more exciting for a counter attack as well, no?
Yeah, because counter attacking right now is, it's quite a big thing. So no, I'd definitely say so.
Yeah, it does have benefits, but
I think like we just said, we're literally in the infancy of it, and it's not going to be perfect, and it might get sorted out and it might make it better. But I just think that it's like we're saying, it's gonna change the game so much, and it's gonna completely change how players view it, coaches view it, kids view it, people view it. It's gonna be different.
Here's one for you coaches. How does somebody like a Carragher or a Vidic or someone, an old school defender, get on in a new system with a new VR, different route, like more offside? Yeah. Do they do better or do they do worse?
That's a good question.
Pace. You need to have pace if you're going to play high.
Like how many
centre halves need to be quick these days.
Yeah. No, Matthew, you're spot on. You need to have pace these days, and I think that's where teams are trying to catch up to a little bit. Like I think if you use the Man United analogy with Maguire and Lindelof, and Neville's talked about this a lot, and it's obvious. Like they're trying to do what everyone else is starting to do, is play that high line. But you have two centre halves that, when they have to turn and go, that's literally their weak point. Lindelof a little bit better at it than Maguire, but that's their weak point. So it's changing how you coach your team, recruit your players, the type of players that are needed in certain positions. Like Matthew said, I don't know how fast Vidic was or how fast Carragher definitely wasn't the quickest. But so it definitely has changed it for sure. I don't know how those guys would do, but I think Matthew hit the nail on the head. To be a defender, especially a centre back, you need to have pace.
Yeah, you're happy. You let Van Dijk sit at the back, let the whole team bomb forward. He's got enough pace to cover that striker.
Oh, we do.
Back in the day, you could not leave Carragher back on his own. That kind of play.
No, you couldn't leave like Carragher and Hupia back there in a two.
Yeah. You need 3 or 4 back there, so then the wingers, they can't bomb forward.
Yeah, and at the same time, the attackers have changed too, because your wingers, your quote unquote wingers, are now your strikers. So your absolute rapid players are now the players that are running in behind.
Yeah. So if you want to play right or left back, you've got to be able to bomb forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think VR's changed that, but I also think the evolution of football and a centre half has definitely changed that as well, though.
Yeah, football's changing anyway.
Do you think then Van Dijk could have played 15 years ago when the pitches weren't as good quality? You had to be a bit harder, be a bit more tough. Do you think Van Dijk could do it, surely?
Yeah, he's good enough.
Yeah. I think so. I think
it's not as if he's soft. That's why he plays that way.
Yeah, I think so. I think he is. I think he could do it. I do. I think he could do it.
But in Harry Maguire, he'd struggle.
Yeah, I think
Oh, shit.
I think he may be better.
I think he might be better because I was watching when we watched the Everton game the other day, and they're just trying to put it in the box, which is what they're trying to do with James and Digne into Calvert-Lewin, and it's worked. But I was saying to Matthew watching, I was like, that's literally Maguire's main strength is to get up and win headers. So I actually think Maguire would be better suited to football 2000 to 2010 and a little bit later because he would just have to defend. He wouldn't have to do anything else.
Because he's got a heat like me.
Right, big heat like Scotty. But I think he would be better. I totally think he would be better playing back in the day where you just had to defend. Because this is one of the other things I want to talk about. Like defending's changed. Like defending has gone from being able to defend to literally play first, defend second. And I'll be honest, I just coached obviously in a different country for the last 8 years, but the weeks would go by where I'd be like, I haven't worked on a single thing in defending. Like I might have worked on like team pressing, but as an individual player, especially as people that were playing as my defenders, I never did defending with them. Like every time we did 1v1s or 2v2s or 2v1s, it was so focused on the attacking part. So I think that's completely changed the game. And I saw Mourinho make a comment the other day on Sky where he said that that literally what I just said. He's like, academies are teaching defenders to play first, like rather than defend first. So what I wanted to ask you guys, and Matthew, maybe I'll start with you because you've obviously done the coaching. Do you think like the balance has swung too far to the way, like too far one way to just playing, or do you just think that's the way the game's going and people aren't really too fussed about the defending part?
Well, I think for a start, I always found, like finding someone that wants to defend and there's the defender is kind of like someone that's just a natural goal scorer. Like teaching or coaching defending, I think is really, really complex and it's quite difficult. So I think there's less natural people like kids or 18, 19-year-olds that just want to defend, because you got like your typical superstars now, like your Mbappe's, Ronaldo's, Messi. They're all like attackers, right? Like, so, but I think the game's evolved so much that if you're centre half now or you're right or left back, well, to start, if you're right or left back, you're basically like you're involved in attacking a lot of the time. So like the concern isn't defending, it's taking the risk of going forward and then setting up to deal with that. And if you're centre half, it's being able to play out the back. And honestly, like, let's be honest, Guardiola was such a big influence. Is an influence. That's what influencers do, is like they shift the culture. What he done at Barcelona completely shifted football, and we're still like living in that. And I think it'll be like that for a while, and it'll get even more complex to what he's done, but he started it, and that's just being able to play. And if you're centre back these days, you have to play because that's just now what people know. And if you can't do that, then you're going to struggle.
He's even changed the Scottish game in that way. So many Scottish teams are trying to play the ball from the back, and I'm not a coach. In my opinion, they're not good enough to play from the back.
Yeah,
Scottish football used to be lump up the park, score goals, blah blah blah. But they're trying to play from the back, and some of the first touch, the passing ability isn't good enough to play from the back. But because, just as Matthew says, the culture's changed. Every manager's trying to play proper football, but some teams just aren't good enough.
I'd agree.
He evolved it. He completely like. We don't even realize how big it'll be for until 20 years from now. He completely changed the game. Like, it was definitely going that way, but he took it next level and it took this massive jump. And then when that happens and there's success, everyone just follows what the successful team does. So then you follow that
blueprint
philosophy of that, and it's completely shaped the game.
That Spain team that won the Euros and the World Cup back to back, that was unbelievable. Yeah. But that was just the best football you'll ever see. You're not going to recreate that on a Tuesday night in Hamilton against Rangers. Like, that's not happening.
In the pouring rain.
The pitch is shite.
Yeah, I think like Greg, we used to always we always used to watch those Barca games, and it was like class to watch them. But I think like people don't understand that as well, that from the outside in, that that's the culture of Barcelona and always has been. Like before we were born, that's what Barcelona have done forever. Like they've tried to play that way, that system. Their kids from the age of 6 years old that are brought into an academy are not just, you know, coached to play that way. Like mentally, that's the way they think about the game. Like, and I think people misunderstand that and just try and do it. And like you said, Scotty, you know, especially in Scotland, like I've been watching sports scene and it's, I guess it's, part of me thinks it's a little bit better to watch sometimes and the ball just being up in the air and getting kind of lumped. But I just think you need to have a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
And
you gotta be able to, if you aren't good enough or it's not working that day, you need to be able to adapt. That's not the only way you can play. Right?
What did, like, Greg, when you used to go watch like Granty play for Lothian, like what was the, I know that was, how many years ago was that? Maybe what, 4 or 5?
Yeah.
What was like the typical, if you, or like for like Granty's team, like what would Lothian Thistle, like, you know, lower level, like typically were they trying to like do the things we're talking about?
Keep the ball away from Grant.
I mean the ball, to be honest, the ball was in the air a lot.
Right.
As you say, I mean, if you look at like, obviously Granny's pretty good in the air. I remember going to one game and I've never seen someone header it so much in my life. They also had the advantage that they had a boy up front that was absolutely rapid, so it probably comes into what Matthew's saying about just playing on the shoulder and not necessarily lumping it to him, but if you get the ball going over the top and you know that, like, when they beat was it Stirling Albion, they beat in the Scottish Cup one year, and like their striker had 15 yards on the Stirling Albion centre half.
Yeah.
And I think they were like 5-1 up or something like that because they realised that they could just clip it over the top every single time, and this boy's not catching them. But I suppose like the following round they played against St Mirren, and like St Mirren, who were probably championship at the time, they were maybe top of the championship. They knocked the ball about pretty well, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it stemmed from 2 or 3 guys that were, I think Grant would probably agree, were a league above the rest of the pitch. And that's including the St Mirren boys. Like they had three players that were just considerably better than everyone else, and everything went through those 3 guys.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I think like even at that level, you've got to remember that they're playing at like tinier, that where pitches are pretty wet, they're pretty soggy. You can't exactly play like fast flowing football across the floor, can you? Because pitches just don't allow it.
Yeah, the pitch comes into play. It totally does, and I just think that for me, I've told you guys a story about when I coached a game out in Cali and I covered for one of the boys, and like the team we played against was just better than the team I was coaching, and if we tried to play, we would have got absolutely smashed. So they were so high, I just had the keeper play the centre back. The centre back played the ball over the top. You can call it a punt or whatever. In my opinion, it's a pass over the top to the striker because we told them what to do, and we beat this team 2-0 or 2-1. And the coach was fuming because he was like, "You didn't try and play," and I'm like, that's just arrogance to think everyone should try and play because it's not the game. I don't want to keep bantering on about Liverpool because pretty much all of us are Liverpool fans. Scotty more so Rangers. But I mean, if you like watch Liverpool, I mean, Liverpool, how many times is Van Dijk or Gomez or right now Matip or Gomez? I mean, we just try and clip over the top to Salah Mane and almost just see what happens.
Well, when you've got that front 3, why would you not get the ball to them as quickly as possible?
Exactly.
If you've got a dodgy defence, you've got the best 3 attackers in the league.
You don't have Henderson and Wijnaldum and Fabinho better on the ball than people give them credit for, but they're not Xavi, Busquets, and Iniesta. Like you're playing to your team's strength of having 3, well, certainly 2 in Salah Mane, incredibly fast forwards whose game is to get in behind people. Why would you try and play through to get to them?
Especially if Van Dijk's a good pass of the ball. It's not like a punt. Like as you say, he's picking a pass roughly, and he knows where it's going. He's not just hoofing up the pitch. Like. Yeah,
and they do both. I think I remember listening to Gary Neville on that Guillaume Balahaye's podcast a long time ago, like when podcasts were like not really a thing. And Neville said the best teams, if you look at all the best teams, you know, throughout the last 20 years or whatever, They've been dominant in the leagues in Europe. They all have a mix of everything. They have fast players, they have strong players, they play, they can go big. Whatever you try and throw at them, they can come back at you and say, we can deal with it and play that way. Like if you look at Man United's best teams, they could do that. Even the misconception, again, about the Barcelona Pep team is that when you watch interviews of players that played against them, they're like, they would boot you and trip you and nip you and pull your shirt, like everything we just talked about that you can't do anymore, really. Like they would do all that stuff. So I just think there's a big misconception in the way that like youth coaches coach football. Certainly, I mean, I'm in no position to tell anyone that coaches at a professional club on how they should do it. And like we've been saying, the best thing about football isn't a right or a wrong, really, but play to your strengths, I think, is the big thing. And I just think there's a big misconception on that. And I think, like you said, Scotty, certainly in Scotland, is teams are trying to do that where maybe they can't do that and they're getting caught out and they're getting punished. And at the end of the day, it's all right just to be a team that goes big. I mean, we're about to see Scotland play against Serbia on Thursday. If Scotland go through against Serbia by just punting the ball to Ollie McBurney and London Dykes and we go through, I mean, no one's complaining.
What's your thoughts then? What's your thoughts on then, as you say, play to your strengths? But like, if you look at like Unai Emery's Arsenal side, they didn't really have the players to like play out the back, as you say, like maybe like a City do or a Barca do. But like he was so determined to do that like even as someone who couldn't really care about Arsenal, sometimes I'm sitting there watching them shitting myself just because I'm waiting for the guy to like Kolasinac or something like that to make an absolute mess of it. Even when they used to come to Anfield and try and play out the back with possibly against one of the best teams in a high press, and then, but he was so determined. They didn't really, as you say, teams adapt, but they didn't really ever adapt. They would just be so determined to continue with that.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Matthew can comment after me as well what he thinks, but they didn't adapt to it, right? And I think that you have to adapt, and I just think that for me, certainly as a coach, when you look at to keep Arsenal like Arteta, I mean, I don't know if you guys disagree with me, but they're trying to do that and at times still look dodgy, but it looks like they know what they're supposed to be doing and it's been coached quite well, that if they recruit well and get the correct players in, like that Thomas Partey that they've got in already, who looks like he's made them better, like then you can continue to keep doing that. I think like recruitment and the coaching part, as long as there's a plan there in place and you're going to stick to it and you're going to improve it by players and your coaching, then it's okay to do that. And I think fans have to accept that takes time. I don't know what you think about it, Matthew, what Greg just said.
Oh, you have to evolve and adapt and play to your strengths. Like, I don't know why he try play at the back when he doesn't have guys that are comfortable to try and play at the back. And to try and ask them to do that, it's never going to work. Like, Liverpool bought midfielders that are good at winning the second ball because our main tactic is to win the second ball.
Yeah.
We literally play midfielders that win the second ball. That's why Keita's doesn't get a game as much anymore because he can't win the second ball. So Klopp buys players that are able to win the second ball in midfield because that's what we're trying to do. But if you have a back four that you're trying to play at the back and they can't play at the back, I just don't understand it.
Yeah,
I've got one for you, Josh, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about there, like in Arsenal, they'll try and buy the personnel that can play football, that can pass it about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Yogi Hughes' team in Inverness, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any of the players. They're not world class, are they? They're not Premier League football.
No, yeah, of course.
But they properly passed it about. They shifted about. They could play that football at times. But is that down to a coach coaching them better, coaching the system better, like understanding how the system works, or is it because those players weren't the best in the world, but they could pass it about. But then sometimes, like you see Arsenal, they're struggling. Is it because the coach doesn't understand that philosophy properly? Like he's watched a few Barcelona games, gone right, we're going to pass it about now, but he doesn't know how to coach it properly, or doesn't know how to change it, or.
I think it's a bit of both. I think
why can some teams do it, some teams can't?
Yeah, I think it's one. The coach is not fully understood on the. I think whatever you do as a coach, and even if you're like, it doesn't even need to be in football. You could be running a business or whatever. Whatever you do, you need to fully know what you're doing. and believe in it and kind of know how to get there, and then like obviously adapt along the way. And I think some people just think that, right, we're going to play back four, split our centre halves, we play 4-3-3, we have our 6 drop in and we play, and you just kind of expect the players to be able to do it. I think it's that, and I think B, I think that it's man management. I think it's getting the players to believe in it. I think that the big thing in football and sport that you can tell me on this, because I don't know exactly, but if you're winning games, the players are going to buy into it, and if you're not winning games, players aren't going to buy into it, and the most importantly, the fans aren't going to buy into it if you're not winning. So you have to go through a bit of pain, and obviously with Liverpool, I mean, from watching Liverpool, and I'm sure Greg and Matthew would agree with me, when Klopp first came in, you could tell there was something there, but what we've just said, you didn't have the players. Skirtle couldn't do it, Agar couldn't do it, whoever it may be, Lucas Leiva couldn't do it, like decent players, but you could see there was something there, and everyone from the outside looking in was like, I don't get it, I don't see what Klopp's doing, it's not working. But I think as a fan, you looked at it and thought, you can see, even though the players can't do it, Lucas Leiva believed in it, Skirtle believed in it, Lovren believed in it, Sacco believed in it. And after, then you kind of recruit players, and it's kind of a DNA, like a mentality, a mindset in the squad that this is what we're going to do, and you just kind of improve the players along the way. I mean, we've been chatting about this in the last few days about Firmino and Jota. Like Liverpool at some point, and this is the season I think you're going to have to evolve. And I think that right now Jota looks better suited to Liverpool changing how they play a little bit than Roberto Firmino does.
Yeah, I would agree.
In my opinion. And I love Bobby to death, and I wouldn't have a bad word said about him, but you have to adapt and you have to evolve and you have to change the way. And Diego Jota right now is looking like he might be, how he plays might be a good way for Liverpool to change, because now you just have 3 guys that are running at you all the time, running behind, and now teams have to adapt again to play it and change how they play it, because after a certain amount of time, no matter how good you are, teams work you out. Teams definitely work you out. What do you think about it, Matthew? Obviously, coming from a coaching perspective as well, about what Scotty just said.
I think the biggest thing about Firmino is because of our success and the way we've dominated, teams play differently against us. So I think the main man that affects is Roberto Firmino. Because, like, if you remember, even last year, 2 years ago, we used to play on the counter-attack all the time. And Firmino's good at that, because if we're playing on the counter-attack and they're slightly up, Firmino can find those little pockets. He's got room. But now I feel like, I mean, it's fucking Liverpool won the Premier League, won the Champions League. Teams tend to sit in against us. So he doesn't really have, and it's crowded in his little, he tries to find his little pockets, and it's like, it's tough for him. So you see him dropping all the way to Fabinho to get it. Like, it doesn't really, so I just think it's really unfortunate that teams have evolved. When they see Liverpool, they're like, we're doing this. And it was different to what they were going to do 2 years ago. And it just unluckily doesn't suit him.
Yeah, and then I think to continue that on with Scott's question, what he was asking is like, now the coach has to change and adapt to how the other teams are playing and how it's going for you, and get the players in that you think are going to be best suited to now play against teams that defend that way against you. Which I think the big thing is, one other thing to finish off on the kind of defending part of it, or the player part of it, is that, which I don't know how we'll see the impact of it change, but obviously it came into America a year or two before it did here, but kids can't header the ball now until they hit 12. Which I think too, I mean, you can, scientifically, there might be some stats out there about brain damage or whatever, but there's a lot of people that have played football that are okay.
We've been playing football for like thousands a year.
Yeah, hundreds a year.
Yeah, you see what's done to Americans, mate. Donald Trump was running the country for 4 years. Stop kids heading football.
Yeah, true. That is true, mate. I just think, yeah.
I would maybe personally, before I make any formal judgment on it, but I would probably dive into science a little more. But why would it suddenly take this long and suddenly change now? Like, we're in 2020. Like, I'm not having it.
Mate,
I'm not having it.
Schools that header walls, mate. You can header a football.
It's good for a kid. It's like, it's good for a kid to challenge a ball and get over that fear and allow them to know if they like getting stuck in or like or even the ability to like attack a header. Like when you're like that age, development is huge. Like to be able to like work on like attacking a header into the ground or clearing a header or like glancing a header. You now literally can't learn to do that until you're what, 12, and its development is pretty far on.
Yeah,
It's quite a
no,
big deal.
I agree. What do you think about it, Greg?
I agree with everything you said, to be honest. I mean, I would argue that we all headed footballs when we were younger and we all turned out fine, but maybe not in some cases.
I don't know.
But no, I just think it's not. I think they start looking into things too much. I think, like, not to chat shite, but kids are maybe like protected too much nowadays in terms of that
Yeah,
type of
massively, far too
thing.
protected.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like even
culture's
if
changed.
like nothing wrong with like falling over every now and again or grazing
It's
and falls
it's
into that.
minging. See if you need to watch a game of the under 12 and like let's say there's some big fat kid at the back that just can twat it forward from a goal kick. No kid can attack the ball and head it, so it bounces, but it bounces like 5 times, and it's like its lenders literally turns into like a goal mouth scramble. It's horrible.
Will not help kids play football though? They'll pass it about, keep it on the deck.
Well, I think that's partly part of the reason of it, but I just think about what we've been saying.
Surely it does the opposite. They can't head it, fucking smash it.
Yeah, just twat it up in the air and let it bounce.
Yeah,
Causes
no,
so
it's
many
fair.
problems.
That's fair. I think, but again, I just think that it's just
They're not going to be like, Johnny, you can't head the ball, pass it from the back. Like
That's why
Johnny
they call it
can't head the
soccer and not
ball,
fucking football.
kick it forward.
it's like I said earlier, it's a different football's going to be so much different when the kids that are playing with all this that we're talking about, in the next 15 years, it's going to just be a completely different game.
Wait, is that real here, Josh?
England and Scotland as well. Yeah, 12. I googled
Really?
it. Yeah, I googled it.
I can't imagine some Scottish boys being happy with that.
Nah,
So a 12-year-old can stick their nut in his mate in a fight, but he can't header a ball.
Correct, mate.
World's gone mad.
World has gone mad, mate. Last thing I wanted to chat about, which I think is really important, that's totally changed the game from a fan point of view, from pressure on coaches to players, everyone, is social media, and probably most specifically Twitter. Greg, how do you think that's had an impact on the game? Like from anywhere from fans to managers to players. Like, I mean, what do you think about it?
Hugely in terms of like, first of all, players, they can't get away with doing anything these days. Like,
No.
if you look like, not obviously necessarily football, but like, if you look at like that Michael Jordan documentary that was on Netflix, he could get away with like anything back then because it wasn't going to end up on Twitter. Where like nowadays you see like Jack Wilshere smoking a fag outside some club in London, and it ends up plastered all over Twitter with people commenting on it and stuff. So I think in terms of that, football, like players themselves need to be so much more, not mature, because I don't think there's anything wrong with like enjoying yourself, obviously, but players just need to be so much more wary of that kicking about. And then in terms of like fans, like let's be honest, it does your head in. Like when Liverpool got beat 7-2 off Villa the other week, you go on Twitter and you're reading it and you're like, as you say, you've won the league last year and you've got fans of other teams commenting, ripping the piss out of your team, and you're like, well, yous have done fuck all. What, like,
yeah.
And it, I suppose it just winds you up, but at the end of the day, there's probably loads of Liverpool fans that would do the exact same if like United get beat. Actually, to be fair, a lot of Liverpool fans were probably tweeting because United had been scudded 45 minutes earlier.
Sure.
But yeah, in terms of that, like, it obviously brings a lot of like positives in terms of obviously all the videos that you get and like watching transfer news and even just team news and stuff like that. But then at the same time, it is just a platform to pretty much wind people up at the end of the day, which I think is probably is what it is, but probably a bit of a negative.
What about you, Scotty? What do you think?
I think so. As a Rangers fan, right? I mean, you go to a lot of the games, and you sit next to the guy who's the manager. He knows everything about every player. He's slagging them off constantly. If we're not winning, he's slagging off Tavernier, he's having a pish game. He goes on Twitter and puts on the exact same things. And if people can read that, people start believing that. That can change the culture. Like, it's so everyone's got an opinion on Twitter, and like your local joiner can go on Twitter and tweet like he's the manager, slag off every player. I think it's so bad for the culture of football.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Have an opinion.
I agree. It's definitely got that big con. What do you think about it, Matthew, overall?
Oh no, I agree with Scott. I just think Twitter as a whole, when you have a platform, I don't think us as human beings in a society should be. It's good for us when we have a platform where you can take in so many different opinions on a subject. Like, I just don't think we're that advanced yet to be able to do that. So, I do think it's a bit just. I don't really get it. Hence why I don't have Twitter at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I think the big thing about it for me is like I feel like on Twitter, one win, for example, let's take like Arsenal the other week against Man United, right? Winning 1-0. One win and the perception is like and a big game as well. The perception is and the chat is like, oh, look at Arsenal. I'm not just picking on Arsenal. You could pick any other games. That's on the top of my head. And everyone's like buzzing about it, and Arsenal looking good. And then all of a sudden, they go with Aston Villa the next week and get beat 3-0. And it's the complete opposite, and fans are moaning and Arteta this and Arteta that. Like, I just think it switches the perception from a weekly basis onto managers, which ultimately can lead to managers getting sacked. When like people, we sat here and talked about like the coaching part of you, like it's a process, and you can't go off of football on a week-to-week basis. And like you just said, Scotty, it's giving people that like a moan a voice, and people kind of take things like that and they run with it. And I mean, it's made it. Think how much more difficult of a job it is now being, a player as well with getting abuse. Don't get me wrong, which we can talk about, but being a manager, I mean, the pressure is heaped on you on a weekly basis.
Got Twitter, because
I know. Like, look at
every night, innit?
perfect. I was literally about to say, like, look at Solskjaer. Like, 1 week Man United are amazing, and then the next week he should be sacked. I mean, I can't imagine like being in his shoes right now. It must be horrible.
I said this to Greg the other day. Like, I bet you Solskjaer's a lovely bloke, like a really nice guy. But I can go on Twitter, tweet something, call him anything under the sun. He could read that, and how depressed does that make him? I've never met the guy, but I'm sitting here, an absolute nobody in the world of football, can comment on the way he's working.
And have no facts about it either. Like, the thing that I don't get as well is people make like judgments and comments on certain things and that when they have no idea what the facts are. Like, you have no idea why whoever XYZ isn't starting at the weekend, and it's straight away it's on the bandwagon of like, get him out, like this formation, this team. Like, you haven't seen the team in training that week. You don't know that whoever has a knock. You don't know that whoever mentally or their strengths playing against that left winger is in X. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much that goes to it, and it's just this diluted environment of like, I don't even know if negativity is the right word. It's just, I don't know.
Solskjaer knows his team better than I do. I've never seen Man United train. There's a reason he's starting Fred or McTominay. He's doing that. He's not just doing it for a laugh. Like,
He also knows what player is. He's played at an extremely high level. He's played with some of the best players ever. Like, he's not like football daft, but
as a Rangers recently, they got Jordan Jones, right? A really good winger, but he's never been playing. And then last week goes out and breaks COVID rules, goes to a party, puts the whole season in jeopardy. There's a reason he's not been playing all season. It's not because he's not. The guy's attitude is probably terrible. Like,
100%.
Yeah. And if he's
really good point.
Training or he's been a dickhead at training, he's not getting a game. Like,
it's a good point.
Not playing him.
The biggest issue about it, a big con for me about it is, and I've definitely done this. I'm sure we all have. I certainly have. Maybe over more people getting emotional and putting a tweet out. A few wines, few tennies down you, and we tweet. But the biggest thing for me is that nowadays people don't even see the game, and then they go on Twitter, and that's the reflection of the game. So I had Matthew. I think you're in the group as well. One of our pals texted us who was working in America, who's a Man United fan. He'll know who he is when I send him this. But he wasn't watching the game, and I put this down here. He's put McTominay mustn't be playing well because he's getting torn to pieces on Twitter. And then he was like, I don't like McTominay. And I was watching the game, and it was the Arsenal game. And don't get me wrong, he gave the ball away a couple of times, but I thought overall he was doing what his job was in there to do, was to win the ball back for Man United. And because this person has seen this on Twitter because he's working, that's his view on the game. And then, he's had a long day. He's probably not going to go home and watch the whole game, is he? He's going to go home and watch the highlights. So it completely changes people's perspective on the game without actually ever watching it. And I think that something I've tried to do for the last while is just like, if you haven't watched the game, and even if you've only watched highlights, you shouldn't. It's hard to comment on it because it's not fair. You haven't seen it in the context.
No word of a lie, right? Last week I was watching Rangers Benfica game. You boys watched it. So Rangers 1-0 down, getting hammered. He's going on 5-0. My dad, massive Rangers fan, so he says, is away cooking dinner. He comes in 1-0 down. Oh, we're fucking shite.
Aye.
Comes in at half time. We've had a player sent off. Rangers 3-1 up. He goes, oh, Rangers are a great team, aren't they? I was like, yeah, fucking like generally not. They haven't included the boys who've been sent off. But that's his comments on Rangers. It's like,
Yeah.
Imagine he had Twitter.
I know. I know. I just think
The world.
For me, that's the biggest con to it, is that people have these opinions on football and they're quite strong about it without actually watching it. And one thing I've tried to do since I've come back is watch as much as I can sports scene or match of the day and that, and then you have a relatively fair reflection on it, and you're not just going off of what folk are saying on Twitter and Instagram, which is a far which is. Here goes Scotty.
You imagine Scott McTominay watches you at a day in the bank and then goes home and tweets about you.
I know it.
Watch you working at the bank. Go, that Greg Wilson's off. Okay.
Don't get Greg on a Monday.
Yeah, it'd be a boring day for the guy. To be fair.
Imagine he was able to do that. Like, you'd be like, what the fuck?
To be fair, just to go back to what you said about McTominay and your mate, like, obviously he probably did give the ball away maybe a few too many times in that game, whatever. But I read something the other day. Bruno Fernandes gave the ball away 37 times in that game. It was on Twitter. And because don't get me wrong, he's obviously a bit of a game changer. He's obviously a bit of a baller, but no one really mentions him because they know that the following week he scores 2 and gets an assist against Everton.
Yeah.
It's forgotten about where McTominay's a completely different player. He's obviously not going to create as many chances, score as many goals, but like that'd be like your mate technically saying, "Oh, I don't like Bruno Fernandes purely because of what he's read on Twitter that day." Well, I mean, but at the same time, you've got to understand that everyone goes on Twitter and makes judgments.
Of course, it's part of it. It's part of it. There's no changing it. I think that the biggest thing is that what you just said there is it's a week to week basis, and people kind of change their opinion. And I think ultimately, what you need for your team to be successful, realistically, is you got to get behind the manager and the team and be positive about it. And Twitter and Instagram, social media plays a part in football now, and it doesn't help. I mean, look at Man United. I generally don't think Man United are being helped by how their fans are on social media with how back and forth it is. Like, just pick one way or the other. Like, either he's in or he's out, Solskjaer. And at least that way, you're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. But you can look at that. Same with Arsenal. I think Chelsea's fan base seems fairly positive on Lampard and are down to give him time. And I think you can see that in the team. Like, they look like they're getting a bit of time to settle and a bit of time to gel. And I just think that when people are constantly flipping back and forth at a fan base, it has a massive impact on the team.
Would you argue that, say someone that let's just take, because we're on Man United, let's just take them for example, someone that goes to Old Trafford every weekend and pays 80 quid a ticket, so they're spending God knows how much a year, did they have the right to go home and moan on Twitter because they've paid that amount of money to go and watch it live, or would you still think they should keep off Twitter?
No, I think everyone has the right to moan on Twitter. I just think that the issue is that typically what we do as people and humans is you always go towards the negative because it's like it's more gossip's like better than just like a good thing said. So I just think that you have to learn how to manage it as a fan, as a player, as a manager. I mean, if I was a manager or a player, it's harder probably for a player because they've grown up with it. But certainly as a manager, I mean, I wouldn't go anywhere near it because I think you just need to have your opinion and what you're trying to do with the team and stick to it and not listen to all those outside voices. So I think everyone has the right to moan, especially the fan that goes and pays God knows how much money every week to watch a game. You have the right to moan, but I just think it's more like, as a fan of the club, you need to be doing more than just reading your Twitter and seeing what is on there for your judgment of your team.
As human nature and culture, as a British Scottish person, it's so easy to go and criticise somebody, but it's so hard to go and praise somebody. Like, we love when people fail. So easy to slag them off and go negative, but there's not enough lovers in the world. There's too many fucking haters.
We need a lot more lovers, Scotty.
But how depressed is Scottish and English Twitter? Like,
yeah,
what is just moaning, and as soon as the team does bad, they just love to criticise and hate.
100%. We've said that about the Scottish national team. Like, Matthew, I think it was you that said it, was the players say that they're enjoying like being under Steve Clarke and that. And as much as we think as fans, ultimately the players are on the pitch with the manager every day. If they say that, then we should all probably go, well, we've got to get behind it, regardless of what we think. But the negativity towards Scotland, Matthew, is the national team is probably one of the worst.
I don't know if anybody you know, but like, what is it Twitter like in Spain, Germany, and stuff? Like, surely they're not sitting there tweeting, slagging Barcelona and like the culture of the game, like,
because they're good.
Because I think they do. I think it's human nature to moan and complain, and social media.
It's not human nature. It's just Twitter's a platform where, like I said, we're not like humans aren't. We're not built for that. It's not meant to be like that. It ruins the whole idea of it also ruins the whole idea of an open conversation and an open-minded conversation, and defines the difference between a debate and an argument. Like, folk can't debate anymore because it's just so opinionated, instead of like me listening to Greg, who I'm debating with, and actually taking on to what he's saying, compared to like, no, like Twitter creates that like atmosphere.
On Twitter, you can literally block or unfollow somebody if you don't like what they're tweeting. Like, if you don't like what they say to you, block them.
For sure. And I think to kind of piggyback off what we've just said, is that we've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about social media, and we've gone to all the negatives, right? Like, it's just easier to go to all the negatives. Greg made the point at the start, like there's good things about it. You get to see the highlights and the clips and the, you know, all the great things that come with it. It's got two sides to it, but I just think that social media has definitely changed how the game is now, because I think there's so much pressure on managers and teams and a player when they sign to like immediately hit the ground running. Like, I do this too. If Liverpool are signing a player, or signing a player that I'm not sure about, I go on YouTube and watch highlights of him. But like, realistically, like, I can't judge him until he gets on the pitch. He's had time to train with the team. He's got himself into the team. He knows what he's doing. But because I've seen these videos on YouTube, I assume I know what I'm getting. And that could lead to me being like, oh, he's not doing it. He's shite. It was a shite signing. But you need to give them time to bed in. But on the flip side of it, it's great that you can go and watch a player that you've never heard of and see what they're like before they come in. It's got good and bad.
It's no surprise that if you look at it, they're like, how many managers or players have Twitter? Not many.
Not many.
What do you? This came to my head now. What do you think of Mourinho and his whole Instagram thing?
Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't suit him, does it? It doesn't suit him. Like,
no, at all.
Did you see the one he put up on the bus the other day?
No.
It was like a photo of him sat in the front seat. He was like, I hope everyone on this bus is as happy as I am. Training tomorrow, 10 a.m. boys, or something like
what? And that's on his own Instagram.
That's on his own Instagram.
It's like he's taking the piss out of the fact that it's weird. Like,
I don't like it.
Not even seen it.
I think he said in an interview to his endorsements or his what are they called, like his sponsors and that. You know, I think they obviously make money off it, so they got his Instagram going. He's obviously got millions of followers straight off the bat. But like that post, I thought, I'm like, I don't think managers should get involved with that. Like, posting on a photo of him on the bus, being like, oh, got beat, not good enough. Boys are coming to training at 10 a.m. tomorrow when they're meant to have the day off. Like, I just don't think managers should be doing that.
To be fair, I'd argue no one over the age of 40 should be on social media.
Was it Gattuso that said, he was like, when I got beat, I'd go and sit in the change room, wouldn't speak to anybody for 2 days. Now kids put a photo on Instagram, put a selfie of them, and it's like,
no, it's true. It's
an old school mentality, but
it's changed the game. So now as a manager, you have to manage your players differently, right? Like
you boys have said it before. You go on like any Liverpool's players' Instagram, and all it is them playing football or at training or on a Liverpool shirt. It's not like what they're doing on their days off or like you go on Trent's, everyone's just him playing football. And it's geared towards Liverpool.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, which we'll talk about on another one when we do it. But I think clubs now have to think about, or certainly a manager. I think someone that thinks about it as much as Klopp does, or Pep does, or like a Pochettino does. All these top managers. I think you need to look at the player and how they are on their social media and determine whether that's going to fit into your group or not. I think that comes into recruitment these days. I think that's how deep they go.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to make yourself look like an idiot on social media, isn't it?
Massively, and it affects the team. But
what was Shaqiri wearing, by the way? I don't see his Instagram.
Yeah, I did.
When he was leaving out.
After this, go look at now when he's arrived in Denmark or whatever. Go look at what he's wearing. What a player, by the way. But mate, what is he wearing?
Great player is Big Shaq.
I've seen your scarf, young man.
All right, they're poor, mate. They're poor.
That'll make an appearance on the show soon.
Aye, get that on, mate. I want to see that on one of the next shows.
Wait for the colder nights. My house is about 100 degrees and I'm sweating my cunt off.
Matthew, how many outfits did you try on before coming on?
I actually didn't have time to try on any, mate. So
you're not.
I didn't even do my hair.
You've picked well, to be fair.
We'll get a wee plug for Callan Forest though. Callan Sal on Friday morning, boys.
Callan Sal on Friday morning, mate. Shout out Callan.
That's what it's for.
Right, lads. Well, I think that's everything I thought we should cover. I think that one of the reasons I kind of wanted to do this, to be honest, is because certainly for me and you guys are the same, is that we've all grown up loving football and we love the game, and I think we're kind of in that in between generational gap where we've seen what it was like a little bit before, and then obviously but we've grown up with it, to be what it is at now. So we're comfortable with social media, but we also know what it's like without it, for example, and how the game used to be. So I just think we're at a good kind of age in life where we can kind of give good opinions on both sides of things without being, as Matthew said earlier, too opinionated, and be quite open about it. But that was decent. I enjoyed that. Something to do in lockdown.
Scotland score prediction.
What's that?
Scotland score prediction.
Yeah.
I'm up for that. Go on then, Scotty. You can. What do you think it's going to be? Serbia, Scotland.
Up with Scotland.
Love the Tartan Army, but I'm going 2-1 Serbia.
Oh, mate, it's a shambles.
Out. Stevie got out. I'm going on Twitter right now.
Does it go? It goes to penalties.
Aye.
I'm going penalties. Scotland win.
Greg.
Don't know, but I wouldn't fancy being the Scotland player that has to take a pen. Imagine the pressure on that.
Nolan Panenka. Last minute.
I think Steve Clark puts on a masterclass. We win 1-0.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. I'm going after extra time. Scotland win 2-1. Lee Griffiths bags the winner.
Oh, that's not a bad show.
That's what I'm going, mate. Scotland in the Euros. Me, Greg, and Scotty are watching them play in Rome while Hobbs gets married.
Not even going to the wedding.
Not even at the wedding. Sorry, Vanessa. We're not going.
Well, Scotland play on the Saturday. We're not going.
Nah. We'll be there. We'll be there after. Sponsored by Tenants.
That's the first plug.
That's the first plug. Tenants. We want a sponsor. That's the goal. Tenant sponsor.
Agreed.
Right. Well, that was decent, boys. I appreciate it. That was good.
When we do it next one.
We'll do. I'll check out and everything, and we'll do another one. We'll do another one in the next few days or whatever. And we'll just keep going with it.
One Scotland have won.
Aye, one Scotland have won. One Scotland are in the Euros, mate.
Mon the Tartan Army.
Mon the Tartan Army.
Boys.
Right, lads. Appreciate it.
Cheers to that, boys.
Speak to you tomorrow.
See you later.
See ya.